27. To rip the earth. The earth reverted to its natural state, pressing the loamy soil around Knox. He held his breath, fighting the urge to take a desperate gasp. His throat tightened, and he pushed back a wave of panic. Trapped. Again. Heat rolled over his outstretched arm. The sensation shocked him. Heat? From what? He assumed he had snagged a root on his way down, but focusing, he could feel the air swirl around his arm from his elbow up, even as the earth around his shoulder held firm. He prodded the cord within his grasp. Distinct strands woven together with sharp spurs slivering out where it had frayed. A cable? His held breath pushed at an internal clock. He had 10 or so minutes before he ran out of oxygen and his body entered a passive stasis. In such a state, he could survive for several days, but would be at the mercy of whoever found him, and Rickon would be left to the mercy of the Timosians. "Never leave your fate in the hands of the earth or the sky," Solus had said. "The elements are fickle masters." He focused on his grip, blocking the claustrophobic sensations. The cable's frayed edges dug into his palm with sharp spikes. He gripped it tighter. Warm trickles of blood tracked down his arm before they healed and slicked the line. He flexed his arm, making a motion to pull it into his chest. His hand slipped, losing precious inches on the lifeline. Everyone he had left to love was back in that cluster. People he had known all his life, Maven and Gord, Daden, and even Logan. Kip. Her sweet, round face with its wide-eyed gaze. An overwhelming sense of responsibility filled him with fresh urgency. She was his to protect. Inch by inch, Knox climbed his grip up above the slicked section. New barbs cut into his palm. This time he waited until his hand healed over and the braided cord felt tacky beneath his fingers. Pent-up air pressed in anticipation. Heat flared and spread through his limbs like a building pressure as he called on his strength. The grip he purchased became a clamp, and his forearm flexed. For a moment, nothing moved. Then, all at once, the earth gave way around him as he pulled himself toward the surface. He shifted his grip once more. It was enough to pull his head clear, and he broke free of the earth with a sharp intake of breath. The tang of acrid smoke did nothing to diminish the sweetness of the open air as he blinked loose soil from his eyes. Scattered around him, half buried, lay twisted and smoking debris. The cable he held was attached to a large section of hull embedded a few feet before him. A shudder crept down his spine at how close he'd come to being pinned within the earth. The sound of a hovercraft filled his ears as raiders converged on his position. A shout went up, and one of the pods broke in his direction. The engine pitch increased as they rushed to intercept before he could regain his feet. Knox wriggled free, eyes on the incoming attackers. Bolts of energy sizzled around him, and billowing smoke moved between them in shifting clouds, obscuring their line of sight. Instinctively, he reached for his belt. Oh, thank the sky! His club still hung at his side, its twisted end packed with dirt but still attached to its hook. With a breath, his muscles hummed with tension, his vision sharpened. The sounds of the whole chaotic scene broke down into its individual parts, and he could pick out each incoming engine. A grin cracked his lips. Around him lay the scattered detritus of the broken-up hovercraft. He'd wanted projectiles, and now he had them. He darted forward, dodging bolt blasts, and scooped up a piece of shrapnel, releasing it in the same motion. With lightning precision, the chunk of iron lodged itself into a raider's chest, bending his armor inward as if it were made of foil. Another hail of bolts loosed in his direction. Knox dodged with sure-footed steps, undeterred, gathering anything he could throw at speed. Each object found its mark, piercing armor and exploiting the narrowest gap. A far-off crack split the air, the sound muting the battle noise and turning heads. Rickon. He pushed into the air to see the cause of the sound. The momentary vantage left no wondering. The Brekka was pushing into Rickon and cutting through buildings like a knife through butter. If he didn't do something quickly, there would be little left of the small cluster. His gaze fell on the probes pulsing from beneath the remaining craft gathered along the forest's edge. This ends now. A few well-timed jumps and he dropped onto a platform with a muted thud, lifting his club from his side. Frantic shouts went up a split second before he carved a grisly line through their ranks. A bolt blast from one of the other craft took Knox in the side, knocking him off balance. Stunned, he did his best to shake off the impact, impressed again at how powerful the bolts were. Another volley spattered around him, forcing him to dive for cover. Recognizing their vulnerability being in close proximity to one another, the other pods began to disengage locks to separate. If they manage it, they'll have me surrounded. With a quick glance over the empty deck, he looked for options and couldn't help but smile when he spotted a large winch anchored to the front of the craft. Dodging bolts, he slid along the bulwark and up to the winch. Throwing the lock pin, he pulled the cable free as fast as he could manage. He stood, hefting the weighted hook in his hand. A still conjoined platform near him started to pull away under a cover hail of bolts. 2 found their mark, hitting him in the chest and hip. His vision blurred, and he stumbled. Bleary colors shifted as he hurled the anchor toward the interconnected craft. The hook clanked as it hit and wrapped around a structural pillar near the driver's pit. Both vehicles lurched, knocking the crew from their feet as the cable pulled taut. Engaging the winch, Knox recalled the line, setting the 2 craft on a collision course with each other, and jumped clear. A concussive blast hit him from behind as the platform and winched craft met in spectacular fashion. The generators were far more sensitive to impact than he would have guessed. That was true of the generator Kip's father had destroyed as well. An important detail for the Order to know. A couple of the craft had managed to disengage before the impact, and Knox claimed one, dispatching the crew in moments, but the other retreated for the main road, pulling up their probes and picking up speed. He cursed. The last thing they needed were reinforcements being called in. The Earth shook and crashed, pulling his attention back to the cluster. Chase down the Tumultians or protect the cluster? Flinging the pilot's body out of the driving pit and onto the deck, Knox grabbed the controls and shot toward Rickon. He was an untethered shadow covered in soot and gore, trailing destruction and columns of black smoke, but he would not abandon his cluster. As he neared, the full extent of the damage inflicted on the small town became clear. A pod of Deckham had transformed the roads and paths into broken furrows and dismantled cobblestones. Where the Brecca passed, nothing remained. Trees and buildings alike were turned to kindling. Knox slowed the craft to navigate the wreckage, fearful he would find bodies. Thank the sky for small mercies. He saw none. An explosion cut through the air. The pressure wave hit his eardrums and rattled his teeth. He spun, searching for the source as the surrounding hills echoed the clap back and forth. Oily smoke billowed up from the far edge of the cluster. The shop! Panic built in his chest. Kip had been there, along with Maven and Gord. The earth trembled as the Brecca reached toward the sky, sending trees cascading to the ground like wheat before a scythe. Its rocky head stretched upward, loosing a roar, the subsonic sound setting every surface trembling with the vibration of it. Why is it still attacking? The probed vehicles were destroyed, were gone. He checked that the controls on his craft were disengaged. They hadn't been. Damn! His mistake had sent the beast into a renewed panic. He slammed 4 separate toggles down, and the probes retracted. Knox rounded a deep pile of wreckage, bringing the creature fully into sight. In its frenzy, the beast had flattened everything around it. The old-growth trees leading up to Gord's shop lay reduced to splinters. Thankfully, the sound of the explosion turned out not to be from the shop itself, but from old fuel barrels Gord had stored behind it. Thick flames engulfed the barrels, but so far they had not threatened the structure. His relief was short-lived. The barrels were inside the barrier. The Brecca gathered itself once again to attack the electric perimeter. Knox cursed. The craft's more powerful probes had convinced it the only way to escape was through the very place they'd hoped would be a refuge. It rushed the yard again in a raised tunnel of earth and then veered off as it neared the energy line. The probes were obviously a deterrent, but only time would tell if they would hold up under the mindless fury of the wall of stone. Knox pushed the heavy craft forward, over the probe line and into the yard. Gord waved at him, running from the main house toward the shop. "Gord, no!" he shouted. "Go back!" Gord gave no indication he'd heard Knox, but kept right on lumbering toward the shop. Knox growled a curse, parked, and jumped to intercept the man. Gord barely paused before barreling around him and swinging the door wide. "Perfect timing!" Gord shouted, making straight for pipework along the one wall. He spun a large valve and barked instructions. "These lead to the outside hoses. We can still save the building." Knox didn't move as he watched the man hurry around the shop gathering items. "Gord, forget the shop! The beast breached the barrier. It's only a matter of time before it does it again." "I know," Gord said with a frank look and then turned. "Grab the hoses." "Where are the others? We need to get everyone out of here." Gord didn't look up and kept moving through the shop, gathering items. "They're already heading into the mountains," he said, voice raised over the din. "I wasn't confident in the barrier. We don't have enough power. It didn't take much convincing to get people to leave. Logan's leading them. We loaded up the craft we had with supplies and sent them off." He paused to set down the items in his arm and pulled out a thick canvas bag from beneath a shelf. "It's just us left." "Us who?" Gord's eyes flicked up. "Maven, Kip, and myself." "Why are you still here?" Knox shouted, frustration and worry making his stomach feel stretched and thin. Gord finished with his pack and tossed it over his shoulder. "Kip wouldn't go. Logan tried to take her, but she threw a fit. I haven't seen the likes of it since Amelia was young. Maven was able to calm her, but only with the promise we would wait for you." Knox groaned. "You were going to let the beast bury you because a child had a tantrum?" "No." Gord thumped Knox good-naturedly on the shoulder as he moved back to the door. "We know our way around a strong-willed little one. I suppose we were holding out hope you would return in time. And you did." Knox cleared his throat as sudden warmth filled his chest. "Right," he stuttered, even as the ground trembled again. "Let's go." Gord's face set into a firm line. "Not until I get these hoses running on the roof. I don't want fire to take what the beast leaves." He ran ahead and started up the ladder at the side of the building, a thick hose in tow. The land outside of their thin boundary was unrecognizable. Trees that had surrounded his home for generations lay snapped and hewn from their roots. He stumbled as the earth shook beneath him and the Brekka's liquefaction stirred the ground beyond the probes. "It's coming back!" he shouted. "Gord, get down from there!" Heedless of the burning fuel, the beast rushed the barrier, slamming through the protective line as it breached, and crashed into the shop. The back half of the building crumpled. "Gord!" Knox yelled, and jumped for a portion of still-standing roof. He landed near the ladder to see the destroyed pieces of the building being swallowed in the Earthbound's thrashing liquefaction. The roof shuddered and swayed, and Knox crouched to keep his footing, scanning the roiling mess below for any sign of Gord. At the torn edge of the roof, the hose Gord had been towing hung taut. Knox scrambled to the line. Gord hung below, gripping the woven cord. "Gord!" Gord looked up, relief filling his pinched features. "Pull me up!" "Hold on!" Knox grabbed the hose and hoisted him as fast as he could. The building lurched to the side as a load-bearing wall gave way. Knox fought to keep his balance as rafters swung down in violent arcs beneath him. One of the beams swung around and slammed into Gord. The hose jerked up, suddenly free of the man's weight. Instinctively, Knox threw himself over the edge after him, holding tight to the heavily braided hose and letting it swing through the now open space. He caught a half-wedged rafter with one hand and pulled himself clear of the chaos. The ground shifted and heaved as it fluctuated between a liquid and a solid, the creature writhing within the probes. It seemed to be trying to retreat. With an arched flash of light and spray of sparks, one of the probes broke in the circuit. The Brekka quieted, as if relieved. A rust-colored strip of fabric below caught Knox's eye. Gord's limp body draped over a remnant of wall. One eye on the still-fluctuating liquefactions, he dropped, moving to the man. A piece of the roof pinned one of Gord's legs, and Knox leaned into it, ignoring the warm rivulets dripping from his hands as the edge of the sheet metal slashed into his skin. It would heal as quickly as it cut. Gord groaned, and relief surged through him. "I've got you! Hang in there!" He pulled the larger man onto his shoulders, adjusted his footing, and crouched. Knox jumped between debris until they were clear of the half-demolished building. As he stumbled into the yard, another subsonic tone was emitted from the creature, making his bones tremble with the frequency. Next to the Tumulcian hovercraft he'd commandeered, Maven clung to Kip, watching the scene with a horrified expression. He ran toward them. Without waiting, Maven pushed Kip up onto the craft. Knox took pains to cushion the impact of his own leap aboard the large craft before lowering Gord gingerly onto the deck. Deep crimson stains bloomed from Gord's thigh, joining the smears of blood on the deck left from the afternoon's earlier victims. The sound of the Brekka's attack dimmed as it retreated underground. Crackling pops from the fire punctuated the silence in its sudden vacuum. Maven, oblivious to it all, murmured over Gord while her hands moved with lightning efficiency, gathering gauze, bandages, and healing salve. Several bags of gear were already on the transport. She had no doubt loaded up the moment he had arrived. A good thing, too. "How can I help?" Knox asked. Maven glanced up, but didn't stop her work. "Get us into the mountains. I'll keep him stable and sedated. Lynn and I will have to work on him at camp." He let out a pent-up breath. "He'll live?" "He better," she whispered, and then paused her work to look up. "I can't find anything other than broken bones right now. The blood is from a puncture, but it missed anything vital. He's unconscious, but his pulse is steady." Knox let out a relieved huff. "Where am I going?" "Searle's place. That'll be interesting." A wry twist pulled her mouth as she returned her focus to Gord. "I'm sure it will be." Knox stepped back and bumped into something small tucked behind his legs. He looked down. "Kip," he breathed and dropped to her level. She let out a small cry and tucked into his arms, keeping her eyes fixed on the boundary where smoke still billowed. "I heard you wouldn't leave without me," he said, scooping her up and strode back to the pilot's pit. She met his eyes and shook her head. "Logan would have kept you safe," he gently admonished. "You should have gone with him." "Only you," her small, clear voice chimed like a bell. He froze and stared down at her as the unexpected words, paired with a lilting Outer Reaches accent, washed over him. "All right, then,"